The galaxy is dead. This was the term commonly used when one were to describe the current state of the galaxy, especially after what happened. There was once a time when the galaxy was alive with activity and commerce. A true golden age it was. It was once the home of mighty empires and powerful megacorporations that oversaw the day-to-day operations of known space and its inhabitants. Every day, millions of starships ferried billions of people across the stars and carried trillions in commerce to every planet within their reach. There were worlds that were completely dominated by cities that were home to billions, while entire star systems were converted into manufacturing hubs for everything from starships to simple household items the population eagerly bought up. It was an age of true enlightenment and wealth. But sadly, this era of prosperity did not mean that it was an era of peace. Rivalries did exist between both the major governments and the corporations that supposedly served them. Rivalries that eventually spilled over into open warfare that would eventually consume most of the galaxy. No one is really sure just who fired the first shot, but its effects would be felt for centuries to come. At first, it were the governments that fought against each other. The United Republics versus the Sordarian Empire, the Thade Compact against the Garn Confederacy, and so on. All of whom were supplied by the megacorporations who would eventually take over once these governments collapsed under their own weight. But the wars did not end, as the corporations soon began to fight amongst one another with their private armies, continuing the conflict that made them both wealthy and powerful. The corporate wars soon gave way to the Continuation Wars, and eventually the War of the Long March. Conflicts that would completely ravage the galaxy for over 1,000 years and leaving billions dead, with entire planets left both lifeless and uninhabitable after centuries of warfare. Magnificent cities that once dominated entire planets were now nothing more than massive tombs for their former citizens. Entire star systems were destroyed, with very few having some form of government intact. The space lanes, once active, were now silent, with very few ships willing to traverse them, with even fewer able to fight off the pirate clans that now existed within these areas. It was a true dark age within the galaxy, with no signs of it ending anytime soon. Yet, despite the wars and chaos that consumed the galaxy as a whole, there was at least one faction that not only survived, but thrived. The humans, a relative newcomer to galactic affairs before the era of warfare, were seemingly untouched by the chaos that had ripped the wider galaxy apart. Their government was still intact, while their megacorporations that, though powerful, had not made any attempts to usurp their people's leadership. They had remained isolated from the conflicts, and the few ships that were sent into their territory were never seen or heard from again. Eventually, the humans were forgotten, and were seen as nothing more than myths, until they finally decided to rejoin the galaxy. Needless to say, their return to galactic affairs sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Their military, though small, was still better equipped when compared to the private armies and navies that were still being used by the surviving corporations, while their colony worlds were still home to millions who lived in both peace and prosperity. A massive contrast when compared to those still in the few city worlds that still existed, yet they still saw it fit to reach out. I once had an opportunity to meet some representatives from the government many years ago, during one of the few times humanity had reached out to the wider galactic community. The humans had agreed to help in the reconstruction of Tippodon Prime and establish a new farming operation on that world. For this, the humans had sent several of their construction platforms to the planet, and I was there as part of the welcoming ceremony. Once the formalities were concluded, I had a chance to meet with their Minister of Infrastructure and Interstellar Transport, who was a part of the delegation that visited Tippodon. "It really is amazing," I told him, as we stood together and watched one of the platforms deploy itself over the planet, "that such abilities still exist within the galaxy. I don't even think the Nora Corporation still has any construction platforms within their ranks." I'm surprised that none of the corporations have made any attempts to build new platforms of their own. The minister, a human male by the name of Malcolm, commented. Lockheed Martin recently announced that they will be building 4 similar platforms for Hilfaxi Industries and Kormar, At least it seems they finally got their act together, or else we would not be doing business with them in the first place. I could only shake my head at the mention of one of his people's more well-known corporations, as there was a time when it were the humans who were contacting these companies to build ships for them. Oh, how things have changed. Tell me, Minister Malcolm, how is it that your people and government managed to survive for so long untouched? The era of collapse, the corporate wars, the Long March. Many governments did not survive, yet yours seemingly did, and in a better position than even the surviving corporations. How did your people do it? I asked the human, genuinely curious to how his people survived such a traumatic era. Malcolm just shrugged before he replied. It's because we stayed out of it. Out of it? I asked curiously. What do you mean? Remember, my government was never a major player in galactic affairs prior to the wars, Malcolm explained. The leadership at the time knew that no matter what, none of the major powers would ever see us as equals. So rather than try to involve ourselves in the galactic politics, my people adopted a policy of neutrality and opted to focus on self-reliance, rather than on trade with the other powers. It seems that this policy worked out for your people in the end? I asked, still trying to process what I just heard. We may not have been active in galactic affairs, but my government saw just what was going on, Malcolm continued. The rivalries, the corruption, numerous power moves by the megacorporations. We knew there was no way we could compete in an environment like that, so we chose not to get involved, and invested in enhancing ability to be self-reliant. We invested in colony worlds that were dedicated to agricultural production. We established our own mining operations in previously unexplored regions of space. We reverse-engineered any and all technologies we were able to get our hands on. When the collapse began, we were already 80% self-reliant, and by the time of the Long March, we need nothing, he finished, before taking another sip of his drink. Also, jamming our hyperspace lanes didn't hurt either. So if your people are so self-reliant, then why reach out now? I asked him. Why not continue in your self-imposed isolation and thrive? What happened next still puzzles me to this very day. The human minister just glanced at me and said, "Because in chaos there is opportunity." And with that, he walked off to rejoin his people. For a long time I didn't know just what the minister meant by his statement, but as the galaxy slowly began to recover, I began to understand. Eventually, the space lanes were reopened and were regularly patrolled by human warships, thus bringing an end to the pirate clans and their raids. Cities were now being rebuilt with the aid of human corporations and other similar groups, while the corporations that once ruled the galaxy were slowly being bought out by human entities like Lockheed Martin and Assault. Those that were not bought out soon found themselves struggling to survive this new era of competition. While their private armies were forced to be demobilized due to falling profits and huge operational costs, leaving them in a weakened position, not seen since before the collapse. Now I am hearing rumors that the last megacorporation, Nora Hayden, is considering merging with the human entity Airbus Aerospace, which, if completed, could see the disbandment of the last remaining private military in the galaxy. It seems that the galaxy, almost tearing itself apart, gave the humans the opportunity they needed to create their own empire. Yet they did not need to invade a single planet or even fire a single shot. Many of the new governments that have been established now sing the praises of the humans and their government, while human corporations now dominate the economic landscape and support many of the new minor corporations that have sprung up over the years. All of this happened because, unlike our forefathers, the humans chose to stay out.